your bro. Once again, welcome to the date. This is your bro. Welcome to the date. This is your bro. Bro. Right here. It's been a minute, but like I said, I've been always taking a second to have discernment. That's why you haven't seen or heard anything from me in a minute, right? Since the early new year. But yeah, all check out Getter. I always tend to post some of the best and, of course, updated news of the minute. And shout out to the Israelites out there, IUIC, one of the better Bible study groups, I say, existing, way better than your wicked Negro gangs, right, that are sometimes staged by wicked Edomite people. So yeah, this I pop by, I just share. Once again, just having discernment. So much has happened, and so much is still happening every day. So I'm going to cover a few tips before I open up and show you the post. First of all, there's some good articles I've seen, right? The long march towards racial equality.
Independence, Missouri, had to overcome his upbringing.
Both of my grandparents, previous to the war between the states, owned slaves. And my mother died an unreconstructed rebel.
This is an example from 1939.
Kurt Graham, director of the Truman Library, says the archives contain handwritten examples of his racist views.
He says, I went up to the Metropolitan by myself and saw Men About Town. It is a very funny show. The N-word steals the screen.
This is how he thinks.
Yeah, it had no hesitation, no compunction about using a racial epithet like that.
6 years later, as World War II entered its final agony, Truman was thrust into the presidency by the sudden death of Franklin Roosevelt and found himself the commander-in-chief of two armies, one black and one white.
The war was a watershed moment in the process of segregation.
Charles Bowery, director of the Army's Center for Military History, says the 1 million African Americans who fought for freedom in uniform while being denied it at home exposed the hypocrisy of segregation.
It forwarded the civil rights movement because of the massive scale of service of African Americans in uniform. It just could not be ignored. You could not ignore the bravery of African Americans.
And Truman could not ignore the despicable treatment of black veterans like Isaac Woodard.
Isaac Woodard is an African-American soldier who comes home from the war, and he's dragged from a bus by South Carolina police and beaten so severely that he permanently loses his sight. And Truman, I think, just says that's enough.
Did you do anything about it?
He instructed the Justice Department to investigate. An all-white jury acquitted the defendants, and life went on in South Carolina.
So when you hear stuff like this, and folks will say, "Oh, this happened so long ago," right? In comparison, maybe to what happened in 1948 or in 1972, and these are specific dates when significant changes have happened. The same shit happens to, once again, us wicked Negroes, right? Because in a way, and not to say that we don't honor our soldiers as the greatest defendants of what we had prior to now, which was known as peacetime, as we've seen African American, particularly the men, black men. Now we know, as we are Israelites, went to fight on behalf against the Confederacy, which we know also Esau has been fully active in since those years of the war and confederation, and going into the 20th century with what was the industrial age, basically hijacked, and what history tells us is known as robber barons. Look it up, and the oil. So when folks say it's not, or I'm not responsible, whether you be uh, black looking or red skinned, yes, there is no blame to go around but the truth. And the truth and the fact of the matter is, when it comes to reparations, well, yeah, I get a feeling it's not going to happen. Why? Because there's other important things happening, like what's going on in Ukraine and Russia and China, right? But hey, I've been hearing the place to go these days, at least, if you want to get the real I and I, is the motherland as uh, Africanus, what is it? Cyprus Africanus, formerly known as, uh, yes, the Gold Coast and the Holy Lands, right? I mean, I don't have the if it's Cyprus Africanus, but the point being that Africa is named after that person, right? So we're gonna, yeah, Cyprus. I don't have the name in front of me because I am doing this on the rough. As we get into this episode, we're gonna take a look at this, bro, just to give you a collective on the names, right? Especially like what I've learned when I was a child was nigger. Nigger was the country, right? Negro land, as they called it. But then, of course, the intonation and tonality with the spirit of what it was professed and called out on the people, the Israelites, of course. You know, to be a nigger was a bad thing. So yes, we've come a long way, because in the '90s, when we started to have niggers with attitude, niggas, right, NGGA, or niggers with attitude, the attitude is not there. So here we go. We go to fight, and this episode is going to be dedicated also to the brother from, I don't have the state right here, but I know there's an American who's like a Gen Xer, maybe if not a boomer, who went out there to give his services. So I'm going to take a relook at that also when we get back. I'm just kind of, like I said, we're on the fly. I don't come out much because I'm busy watching all my favorite uh, vloggers out there on the tube, right? You know, the owner dipped, right? The CEO. Yeah, look up the new CEO. And hey, once again, let's just take a look into the history of where this is leading us to now. Because if there's, oh, God forbid, the event of a hot war, which means a theater of war, where people are on the ground, and it probably won't be in your downtown city, but more so in the fields, anywhere, any part of the country, including Canada, what you gonna do if they come for you, right? And these are things, while we remain patriotic, we always have to remember. Even to get one love, you have to be one people, right? And trust in one God. Now, they're also challenging that narrative because they're saying, well, we could be one world God, right? Without the spiritual uh, NDEs based on their occultish, hang yourself, squeeze your neck type of initiations where they almost die and they come back, and therefore they feel more godlier because they can actually taper into that whole um, tether, right, between the here and now. And at the same time, if you come from the tube, which is real, right, since they're trying to do artificial wombs, which they've been doing forever, since the 18th, what is it, the World's Fair of the early 19th century, late 19th century, early 20th century. This is real. So, what do you do with all those people? All those, how we claim might have souls, but in reality, they were created without the empathy. So, you have brothers like this guy who joined for the war effort in the 1940s, like many who fought for the freedom, and here you are today saying we want reparations. Because right after that, we still got our asses kicked. You burned down the towns like Black Wall Street, all the way up to the recent. I was telling someone this about just recently, the 1990s, with that whole what do you call Africville town, Africa, John Africa, blew up a freaking town. Is this in Philadelphia? Yeah, yeah. But you know that was so long ago. No, I was a teenager. This is the Gen X hour. This is your bro. Once again, thank you for tuning in. Let's just recap this. Fair use, fighting for racial equality in the military, because I don't know. Don't you feel it's a little weird what's going on right now? Yeah. Once again, this too shall pass. May you live in interesting times. The world is a stage.
An American soldier who comes home from the war, and he's dragged from a bus by South Carolina police and beaten so severely that he permanently loses his sight. And Truman, I think, just says that's enough.
Did you do anything about it?
He instructed the Justice Department to investigate. An all-white jury acquitted the defendants, and life went on in South Carolina. But Harry Truman was not going to let that stand.
Speaking from the Lincoln Memorial, Truman became the first president ever to address the NAACP.
There is no justifiable reason for discrimination.
And just before we go there, look up the NAACP, right? And the folks behind them, always 1947, see? And this bro here. Now we know better, right? Have the discernment. But this bro here, once again, he's going there before discrimination because of ancestry or religion, the order. And how true was True Man? The first, what was he? They say the rumor is was he one of those black, not looking black presidents as they've been through the timeline? Let's take a look. But once again, have discernment and look at the stage.
The NAACP.
There is no justifiable reason for discrimination because of ancestry or religion or race or color.
Risky politics for a president seeking.
Have discernment. Start watching a lot of history, like the books that you can almost not get these days, as I will give you the links in this post, right? Have discernment of the footage and look at the people around. So let's just check this out again.
Or race or color.
Right? Where are they now? What have they been up to since that day in 1947? Pretty deep, right? Whoever lived. But once again, this shows you, not to say the sheeple, but it's always the same type of form since, well, for a very long time, right? Not like serfs. If you look that up, the serfs way back, right? When we had the Moors. But who the serfs were basically the people, right? The common people every day. And you know what's funny about a lot of history videos you see, even in the 40s, even going back to the early, like whenever, you're always going to have a bro and a sister, mother, a family there like us. So this is a very unique time in history where we can, and that's why thus I put out these once in the periodic post because I'm observing as much as you, right? Because of the three quarters are dropping and 10,000 beside one side and the other 10,000, but it shall not approach you. Well, yeah. So yeah, you always have to kind of keep your head down, but have discernment. So look, see what's missing from this picture currently, anyway, in these days. We didn't have any. Yeah, I heard a couple of peace rallies. You know, that's out the window, right? Yeah, because everybody's getting prepared for some shakeup, whether it be reality or whether it be in the matrix or whether it be not reality but otherworldly being, other bodily worldly, right? Because once again, we don't know about the flesh. Once you leave the flesh,
Risky politics for a president seeking a second term.
He has enraged the South with his liberal civil rights platform.
What was his political future in 1948?
He was on the ropes. He was seen to be someone who likely was not going to win re-election.
Days.
and this guy, right? Let's not get it twisted. We were talking Truman was the like boom boom boom, the bomb, right? Everybody know this now. That's your grandparents, easily your great grandparents' age. Like, you see that kid in the back there. Like I said, I always analyze these videos now, right? Because the Latin picture and proof as a time capsule. This person probably about 70, 80, easily, right? 80. If this is the 40s, easily 80. But the when once again we talk about it's not my fault, the repercussions and the reverb of the forefathers, even in spirit, even after they're gone, that's part of the issue. So the Esau's out there, the Redskins, it's not even just like I said, like we know it's not just a white and black thing. We're all together in this, but the majority, the superpowers that be, look like what? You're going to tell me at the end of the day, this guy had the choice to blow up some, like, a couple of cities and just move on, and everybody else fell for it. This was never going to come back in karma, right? Oh, we're just going there. But this is 1947. And of course, just as much, we have people who are more than willing and like, hey, we blew the crap out of them. This bro still probably didn't have much rights, but he still existed. Huh? Let's continue.
After he was nominated, Truman issued the order to end segregation in the military.
What was the
Just take a second and just, what? What? See those
what
bros?
was the
Let's see those bros once again. Huh. Just take it in for a second. Soak it up. Soak it up. Because the beauty of what film and television and the signals have done, the picture, the camera, even in the painting, is capture the spirit through the artist, even if it's not in physical form, the essence of those people, whether they be recreated or reincarnated or have moved on or on some plane right now, right? It's still a generation of people. It's still a lot of people. And it's 1947, and the bomb was dropped, what, 2 years before, if I'm correct, right? 45. Life goes on. There's always one like, hey, there's always some bro, hey, little chubby there. And look, there's people mixed everywhere. Not a lot of ladies, but of course, different times, right? So how did that somehow from then end up today where it's even more bigoted than previous?
Truman issued the order to end segregation in the military.
what was the Army's reaction to this order?
The Army's reaction, particularly in its leadership, was stridently against the executive order.
Truman appointed.
So, and one takeaway in this little part of the episode of the date, this is your bro, you rocks, is okay. So this guy with his one or two people looking, you see the crew. He dropped the bomb, and after that, 2 years after that, only then segregation in the military was like. So even then, if you went to do and volunteer, can we decipher what we're understanding as the whole big picture of the history? So, thanks to maybe a few good souls, bros and souls, right? Many who are, of course, they're not even existing anymore. This systematic racism was already in the military, and he's saying that they literally no, it was they weren't even going for it. So let's move up, let's rewind, and let's take it and just examine a little bit deeper. This episode basically is just to kind of give you a little slice and dice, mainly for a lot of Gen Zers, millennials, whatever they're calling you, Gen Zeros, and you know what? That's so negative. Maybe you got to change that, but at least the Gen Xers are trying to say, which is not necessarily as positive, but the sacrifice of all to show you the patterns that, hey, you know what? We've seen this pattern of people taking up lines and taking up crowds and protesting, and you could still, well, you probably don't see it as much today because they obliterated that, I think, with all the emergency orders, right? Are they officially over? We always got to ask. But look, and these people have since long gone. What could each of these individuals tell you? Food for thought, right? So let's get back. So this Negro here, right? He's trying to fight for equality probably being very, very, very light skinned, like the FBI Negro, Miss Maria, if I'm correct, Maria Hoover.
to end segregation in the military.
What was the Army's reaction to this order?
The Army's reaction, particularly in its leadership, was stridently against the executive order.
Truman appointed a committee headed by Charles Fahey to enforce the order. Records show its staff director warning Fahey the Army intends to do as little as possible and might have gotten away with it except for a black civilian who worked at the Pentagon.
An individual with deep understanding of the Army's personnel practices.
He's the Fahey Committee's deep throat.
That's a way to describe it, yes.
Roy Davenport is one of history's hidden figures.
Now this is where it's going to get juicy, right? Because we never hear about some of these Negroes out here who like just like him. You know, he probably a great guy for some. Did he help the cause, or did he bring us into another burning building years before it was to be predicted? And look, another relevance to all of this is like, I understand you guys down south, you know, all of you blessed people out there, right? You are all dealing with a revival of a lot of negative forces out there. Mind you, if I'm correct, isn't your defense guy one of the bros, right? The Austin guy? It's like, how did this bro get through? Like, really? He's apparently better than even what Colin Powell was, right? Like Steve Austin. Remember him, $6 Million Man? That's what I think of when I think of L. Austin, right? But he also has a hookup with, what, BlackRock? Okay, okay. So I see equal opportunity. That's why we can wave the color bar here, right? Because it's like the first, what do you say, press secretary, ça passe, right? But meanwhile, maybe it's a mask. Maybe it's a mask. Look at the future. You never know, because right now nobody's even questioning that. Eh? How did that bro get the hook? And he's going down there talking with those people, right? And we know, like I said at the beginning of the episode, apparently, you know what? Until I start seeing some bros out there, like especially that bro from that, I'll look up that story in a minute. But the bro who went out there, who went to fight, right? And he was like already almost 60 years old or some shit like that. But he's a pastor and he went down there to fight. I haven't heard anything. So I'm only, once again, I'm dedicating this episode to that brother out there. I'm going to look it up. I don't have the name right now, but he made the news, right? So, but let's concentrate and look up this bro here.
Using his inside knowledge to show the Fahey Committee.
That's a way to describe it, yes.
Roy Davenport is one of history's hidden figures. Using his inside knowledge to show the Fahey Committee the Army's response for desegregation wasn't worth the paper it was written on.
What really turns the coin is the Korean War. Desegregation begins in foxholes in Korea.
With all-white combat units retreating in the face of the North Korean onslaught, black soldiers were sent in to fight alongside whites.
Okay? So maybe the cool 50s, as you see this bro here, did his part. Just prior to that, in World War II, after the bomb was dropped, that's when they were like, okay, yeah, we can have a few bros in, and we're gonna fight. We fought the Japs. That's how they used to talk. Now we're gonna go for they used to talk like that. The cooks, they used to say that K-O-O-K-X or K-O-O-K, cooks, right? They used to talk. So they were calling niggers, they were calling cooks, rice eaters, rice niggers, all of that. But at the same time, you got us niggers fighting, like for them? Not to disgrade that our brave soldiers. This is to upgrade our brave soldiers who have fought in the past wars. Because you see, even now, with this war, yeah, color does matter, because I haven't heard anything about, they're trying to wipe out the history that we had, especially from being Gen X, the power uppers on what happens with the future. Still, they're trying to burn those books. Get ready for that. But the truth will always come out while you still have remnants of living people. Who knows? In Korea people might be easily in their 90s, like MASH, 1950-53, right? Hawkeye Pierce and all of them. So, as we will continue. And you see, Davenport, hey, he hooked it up with his bad self. Let's make sure now that we're equal opportunity killers, and of course, somehow in that equal opportunity self-sacrificers. And you also had the benefits of what was known as reversal surgery back then. But that's a whole different, deeper story. Not too far from the truth. So let's go back. So now we're bros can fight in Korea.
The Korean War. Desegregation begins in foxholes in Korea.
With all-white combat units retreating in the face of the North Korean onslaught, black soldiers were sent in to fight alongside whites.
What happens is that these units turn the tide.
And of course, when they turned the tide, that means they were kicking ass. And I want to go back and take a look at that picture. Because once again, a picture, not this bro, but this. Look at, let's just meditate on that picture for a second. I'd say that's pretty badass. It's badass than any mofo, wicked Negro type uh, gang bang, you know? Like, look at these guys. And not like it's better, not to say, but when it came to that, what people will say, okay, how did they come from this to now non-existent? Well, it does exist. Don't get that twisted. However, shout out uh, uh, Mr. Fitzgerald Johnson. However, it's so integrated. Like maybe this, hey, who knows? We don't know that. Yeah, maybe this guy is the type of lineage of who runs things now. Because once you get into that, of course, foxholes, you're done. Your mind is never going to, even these bros here, right? Were they friends after? We don't know. But yeah, I just wanted to meditate on that because I don't think that's going down actually down in the Ukraine. I don't know. I'm just saying. And even then, we're never ready for that. So here we go.
Wasn't worth the paper it was written on.
What really turns the coin is the Korean War. Desegregation begins in foxholes in Korea.
With all-white combat units retreating in the face of the North Korean onslaught, black soldiers were sent in to fight alongside whites.
What happens is that these units turn the tide, and the army in Korea is on a path to integration because they have finally and completely disproven this idea that black soldiers cannot be trusted alongside white soldiers.
So wars are a forcing mechanism.
They are.
So the next war is Vietnam.
Yes.
As the buildup in Vietnam was beginning and the civil rights movement reaching critical mass, Joe Anderson was a cadet at West Point.
Did you ever wonder, what am I doing here?
I absolutely wondered why I was at the academy when all of our people of black heritage were sitting in encounters and fighting to be treated fairly in the United States.
James Fowler, one of only 6 black colonels in the entire Army at the time, gave him this advice.
He said to me, Joe, we have a lot of people that can sit in encounters. We don't have a lot of people that can get through West Point. That's your job.
As he entered his senior year, Anderson was denied a leadership position in the Corps of Cadets.
My view is that the Academy in 1964 was not ready to have African Americans demonstrate significant leadership in the parades and that kind of thing.
So 1964. So I'm like the Gen Xer, right? The year of the monkey, 68. 64. And here we are, just a tad over, once again, a generation, not that long, 64 is 50 years. We got bro sending all kinds of, how we say, what's the prize word there? Parting gifts? Pretty much. Makes you wonder. So in this episode, and this, of course, this edition, you will see the links to Some other brilliant sites that I've been looking on. Memory Hole, big shout out. You know, these are some of the better sites where I get a lot of the information that, while it's still there and permitted to go out, is one of the better tube channels I've been seeing.
Hey, sir!
2 years after graduating, Anderson became arguably the best-known soldier, black or white, in the entire Army.
Lieutenant Anderson, 24.
Leader
So, isn't that bad? Huh? La section Anderson, the Anderson platoon, Bombarras, right? Look it up. Maybe we can try and even get a little look at a little later, but once again, you're never going to hear that. And once again, the best soldier. This ain't Richie Cunningham, because he apparently was a super soldier. That's my Happy Days nerd side. But he also probably ran it with this guy. Anderson platoon, la section d'Anderson, as they say in French. But I find it's amazing because once again, it turns the tide. And this is why a lot of folks, I guess, panicked and said, well, we can never have that. Or at least buy them out. Right? And eventually, well, maybe that's what we see. That's why a lot of things are very convoluted. And especially when you talk about race and which we know is a construct and it's well established in in not as ingrained in not only genetically but also intellectually when it comes to the education. Now all of that's falling apart. And once again, it's only to be mindful because we've seen bros who've gone off the deep end too. The point being, at the end of the day, this guy got turned down in 1964. Who's to say that anything could be more different today? And what could be done to improve? Because it also goes into the politics of everything, I would say, right? Because politics pretty much is what's running this world, and who's on top of the chain, the food chain or the pyramid of it, because we know it's not who we claim to vote in that really makes any decision, right?
The Academy in 1964 was not ready to have African Americans demonstrate significant leadership in the parades and that kind of thing.
Hey, sir!
2 years after graduating, Anderson became arguably the best-known soldier, black or white, in the entire Army.
Lieutenant Anderson, 24.
Leader of the Anderson Platoon, an Oscar and Emmy-winning documentary which aired on CBS.
You want me to keep moving?
It was probably the first time.
And one thing, like I always go with my posts, as some of you are and following. Like I said, this is the mundane. Sometimes we ramble on, but I want you to find the gold nuggets here, because it's not just nonsense we're picking here. Always have discernment, as especially the camera captures. This is also nominated. So while there was real action, somehow, right, like always, like even today, we're able to get that camera there. That's why we can probably see someone like Austin B maybe chilling with those guys out there, Zelensky and all that, right? But maybe how do they, like, maybe once he's gone, they're like, hey, right? Because he, at the end of the day, he's still that G that's making the deal. He bringing them. He bringing it out. Everybody's like, well, let's get prepared for the bomb. Okay, well, you noticed, right? We started, it was guns. Now it was tanks. Now it's jets. Now, what does that hold for the Israelite? I can't say, because I know there are great deacons who will keep educating me and many of us on what that awakening will, or how it will affect going into this situation with wars, because we have a lot of folk who are in the military and we see the sacrifice they're giving up now, right? They even as the news has said recently, the military is like, no, they're not required and they're not having it. How many folks were sacrificed to probably come to that conclusion? We'll probably might know at some point, but not never. But have discernment, right? I like the shots. Don't forget now, this is Vietnam, so this is what, 1967? We've come a long way, baby.
Anderson became arguably the best-known soldier, black or white, in the entire Army.
Lieutenant Anderson, 24.
Leader of the Anderson Platoon, an Oscar and Emmy-winning documentary which aired on CBS.
You want me to keep moving? It was probably the first time that American had seen an African American in leadership in combat.
Anderson's platoon showed the country what the Army had learned in Korea.
In combat, it's about who can get them home safe.
But in the rear areas, race still mattered.
Black soldiers were not going to take the same kind of treatment that they had taken in civilian life.
Hank Thomas is a lion in the winter of his years, but at the age of 19, he was one of the original Freedom Riders.
A firebomb was thrown through the back window of the bus, and when I was getting off the bus, I was attacked again physically. Each physical blow was a badge of honor.
Sure, he was about to be drafted into the Army for his troublemaking, Thomas volunteered to become a medic and was sent to Vietnam.
The commanding officer was a captain from Mississippi, and the supply sergeant was a redneck from Mississippi.
Did they use Confederate symbols?
There was a group of soldiers in my outfit who flew the Confederate flag. I towed the flag down and dared anyone to put it up again.
Did you have any run-ins with that redneck supply sergeant?
The black soldiers came to me and said the sergeant was not giving them new boots. So I went over to the supply shack, threatened to whip his butt. I almost got court-martialed for it.
See, this is civil rights. These are legacy and legendary stories that I don't believe we have anymore, and not at least since, once again, I always say drop the hop, in the sense, yes, it's good, but come on. Like I said, we can't be fucking B-boys forever. Respect and shout out to those, legends, but even the legends, like you hey, spit it up. However, even if your great grandkids are liking this stuff, can you live something more of a legacy? Like maybe put it in print and start telling us books, writing books, digital, what we call audiobooks of you growing up in that time, for God's sakes. It's only always about 1982, 83, 70, 72, the early days of, and yes, yeah, 50 years of hip hop, that's my age. Like, holy fuck, even I'm like, okay, can't, like, really? I don't want to leave that fucking legacy with with grandkids. Really? That was my time. It was good. Yes, it's a good history like rock. But we know now there's a big devil in all of that. And yes, you like the beat. Fuck the beat. That damn beat. But I guess once again I'll have to digress on that because I could probably be an old head, as they call it, but even though I'm still fresh, fresher than even the young heads, the pill heads, because a lot of those young heads were not around to the truth. Right? A lot of people have gone since then. A lot of legends and artists like Prince, Mike, forget about it. They don't even know. Whitney's been gone, what is it? 11 years this year? Or was it 2014, 2013? Right? But I digress. But I'm going to repeat this story once again before the end of this whole clip right here at the date, just to, I mean, even though it's still maybe the rare or odd, or maybe there might be more now, this guy wasn't having it. He was like, they're putting like Confederate flags up. So have discernment. They say never give up, even though right now we might see all the weird stuff like we saw in the beginning of the year with all these weird brothers getting wiped out by even their own people who are cops. My thought on that whole thing, first of all, okay, that whole snuff culture of news snuff culture, that has been going on forever. That because it's sort of, I feel that's a retaliation or blowback for actually asking to introduce cameras, because the body cameras caught the guy getting beat up, all that, right? Now, 4 black cops. Was it good that they got arrested that quick? Yes and no, because once again, I would not only say, first when I heard that, I was like, how the fuck did, okay, just like this is about the military, There was a time where you couldn't have no Negro, no black cops like that on the force, especially a gang of niggas on who are fucking cops. Yes, because of the town or the part of the city but nah, even yet, but nah, they still had somebody to work under. So I would have been like most people say, oh, I find out it's somebody's mama, right? A lady who's long story short, some chief in charge at that time. She since left. Is another district because the union got her, but she created the Scorpions, right? And the Scorpion unit, is that what it was? Like, how the fuck did that happen? Well, that's the question, right? Even then, if they were there to do the good, which is maybe to wipe out the other gangs, well, do you see the big picture here? How did it even get to that? Well, that happened all during hip hop. Long story short, that happened in the last what 50 years after they started bringing the heroin into the cities, and then the 80s with the crack cocaine, and it was all we know, an inside job and yada yada, right? But yada yada. You hear what I'm saying? So, can we have enough vigor within some of the young people today, maybe who are not as confused with other issues, other selfish issues, to say when it comes to that time, even with the redneck, right? Because the biggest fear of what's happening to those elite powers is that we're catching on. They don't want to see those parties get together. They don't want like a and I think it's deplorable because there's that faction that would consider Israelites a hate group. That's deplorable, right? However, when you have other folks like the clans that have a proven track, documented record in photo, film, and cinema of what they've done and what they still continue to do, maybe just modified. Maybe they don't burn crosses like they used to. I don't know. Maybe they light them up with like neon lights, whatever, right? They're those snakier people who don't have maybe the empathy still beyond, because they would kill white people too. They would kill rednecks also. So the fear of rednecks getting up, even with somebody they're falsely accusing the people of the Israelites being a hate group, maybe they, who knows, maybe we'll start redeeming the rednecks. Maybe that would be a real big, and I feel that's happening too, right? Because even rednecks are following the Israelites, and you know what? Because it's so deeper, it goes back to, like I said, follow the follow your nose and follow the code. It goes back to, once again, what has happened in, back in 1948, right? And at this point now, it's what, 64 years? No, eight, 74 years ago, right there, 80 years. So it's a minute. Let's continue and listen to this great story once again.
They use Confederate symbols.
There was a group of soldiers in my outfit who flew the Confederate flag. I towed the flag down and dared anyone to put it up again.
Did you have any run-ins with that redneck supply sergeant?
The black soldiers came to me and said the sergeant was not giving them new boots. So I went over to the supply shack, threatened to whip his butt. I almost got court-martialed for it, but I got the boots and the equipment for the black soldiers.
After Vietnam, the U.S. abandoned the draft and created an all-volunteer force, which attracted recruits by offering better pay and benefits.
What it did was...
Now, the draft. The draft was real, especially when you're talking about even for all wars up until Vietnam. The draft was how they got you in, and I was even just a baby. I think that ended with Nixon in '72 after enough protests. But just prior to that, they can pull literally, if you know what a lottery is, right? They can throw in a bunch of balls with numbers and select your name by the ball number, and no matter what state you were, and say your black ass got to go fight for Uncle Sam, and that was that. Unless you dipped and went to Canada, which that did en masse at one point. Hello, Canada. And now Canada's the complete opposite of what that was, right? Because, hey, like it or not, folks, especially you folks who are generation whatever new, babies even born today, while they are still getting, I hear, we understand youth as young as 16. When they always say something, I always think less or more. I would say less than 16 who are going on boys, mainly, at least. They say genetically. Imagine the ones who are not genetically boy and they're still saying they're going to put them in, going to fight a war to survive for 4 hours, like a freaking video game. Go figure that. That's how sinister that shit could be, right? Because of a whole modern combat experience, right? Maybe some people believe that so much they're in it. But now, since like what, 72, the American draft. Now, Canada had a draft that was not non existent forever, too, that for the longest time. But there you can look up some of my episodes, the Prime Minister's Rib on my date, and you'll actually get some history as to what Canada's roles into these the benefit of not having a draft. All of that to say, that draft can come back. So while all you wearing your heels and your pumps and and your twerks, oh well, that's a whole other can of worms that can't even go now. We're not ready for it. But are you ready for it? Is the question. For all those boys up in the Crips and Bloods and whatnot and whatnot. When the biker boys out there who are rough and tumble, riding off on the coast and catching the breeze, as they say, down Route 66, when they call you, what you gonna do, right? Because that I could see that happening, and the fact that since my generation arrival, we would have volunteered. Even had friends who were not born here, who came here from countries like Iran, Vietnam. They joined the military. They went to, which is now already 30 years plus, right? The Iraq issue, what do you call Desert Storm, back in the late like 1989, 1990. Here we are. Their kids, their sons are not part of that. So you haven't seen, and that was voluntary. 9/11, the same thing, voluntary, no draft. The force was always ready. But now today, if there was to be, yes, the reserves are there. But if it was like what's going down in Europe, hello, they don't even call. They say, yeah, you're going. I'm just bringing it up because I never thought in my lifetime that shit could happen. But as you see, so it's 1972. Hey, congratulations, you just turned 50. You might still be needed to go through the draft. Think about that.
Vietnam, the U.S. abandoned the draft and created an all-volunteer force, which attracted recruits by offering better pay and benefits.
What it did was dramatically increase the number of African Americans who raised their hand to serve.
Because I was 17, my mother had to sign for me to go in, so 41 and a half years later, here I sit.
Now a lieutenant general, Dimitri Henry joined the Marines in 1981.
Did you experience anything that felt like discrimination as you were coming up through the enlisted ranks?
I would call it points where individuals would show their disdain for someone who looked like me.
So how did they express their disdain?
The typical name calling.
The N-word?
Yes.
How did you react?
I chose not to react. If you're going to allow someone else to control your emotions, then you've already lost.
While Henry was still a sergeant,
Colin, welcome, sir.
Colin Powell became the first black chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff. During the first Gulf War against Iraq, Powell showed the nation a black general in charge.
So that happened, right? I'm just giving you the quick dope on the history, and especially if not during those years, a lot of the drug epidemic, like this is like the mid 80s, 90s here, all when this was going down, that stuff was going on. Even the opioid, the origin with the at the time they used to call it OxyContin, and yeah, right. So that happened just around the time, at least at its peak. Even the gangster hop of the time was all within the era of this late what, admiral general. So take it in context that today, has it changed in relation to military law, legal system? I would say no. Once again, if there's a draft, you're not gonna, and you're wearing heels and you're wearing a skirt, you ain't gonna be ready for that because those people do exist. Those people who are, got their kids all riled up with rifles and guns, right? And they look up to this guy, right? So it's not even as much as race because, but you could see that there's a certain mentality about it. So once again, the fear is when they say the right, it's not left. The left is all completely, and once again, it's all semantics, but it's all about defying a purpose of God, right? Because left of that, you're not sitting on the right hand. Left of that is the imagination, the emotion of it, and it's, hey, do what you want now, how it feels. Whereas on the right hand, right? If you try to sit on the right hand of things, it's not necessarily meaning that you're strict, you're racist, you're prejudiced, you're this, you're a wicked Negro, you're a redneck, right? It just means that, hey, no, there are some basic instructions for before leaving this earth, Bible, and maybe if we take all a look, even there are even rednecks out there once again who are probably understand even learning through the Israelites that, hey, you know what, they're not as bad because I noticed, notice the word disdain. The other guy was like saying the disdain. They were looking at him with disdain. Like, fuck. How, and he's being all humble. But we're always like that, right? Be humble, control your, meanwhile they're calling you a nigger, a this, or that, with, and looking at you with disdain. Now, even these people you could say, but if individual, imagine if your world leaders think of you or look at you with disdain, why even try to exist or work or be in anything that involves where you're going to be among folks that have disdain for you, where at the end of the day, if you had to go and, hey, take on another fucking outside force, okay, I'm not going to have, I have disdain for you, but we're going to fight this enemy forever. How fucking stupid does that sound? Even, I don't know, I'm just off the cusp, right? I digress too afterwards, but before that, I think I would be covering my ass against that person who disdained me and maybe be on the other side of whoever I'm supposedly supposed to take down because I know the person who disdained me, who disdain you, will probably do you and maybe me. You know what I'm saying? So I'm just throwing it out there. I'm just, because it's the same thing, especially when you have these five black cops. Now, once again, we didn't have fucking as many cops as that, but times, years, population, and those are the people you think you can trust. And it's all, and from what we understand, it was all because of what, a relationship, with something. White people don't even do that, bro. Even if they do that, they don't do that. No, no, you don't see no five white guys pulling up, beating the fuck out of one white man that cheated on fuck. No, no, that's weak shit. That was very weak. But once again, you have to have discernment and you look at the ranks, and once you find out it's somebody's mama, literally, who's running the force, a sister per se, some would say, a queen for others, right? Strong, independent, maybe, fucking running the police, and she creates this thing that, of course, right, the higher ups gave money and said, bring some boys on. Like, how the fuck did, so when we say it's good that it's happening to them, we have to also think and understand that first of all, it shouldn't be an isolated thing in the sense that even though, okay, this is a one-off, what does that say about all the other good cops out there who are of color trying to do, but even then they deal with the dilemma of the oath they take on, right? So I didn't find that as a good thing at all. If anything, it and even the fact that it's on the news for so many weeks, Valentine's up until and then once again you got the same lawyer, what's his name, Ben Trump, as I call him, coming in, and then it's same freaking story since. But when the other guy, what's his name, Miles Sharpton, back in the fucking 70s, 80s, 90s, Reverend Jesse Jackson, it's always that. And so that's why I'm like, holy fuck, yeah, we are prisoners of war, right? It's been quiet now this week, but now, you have to expect some fucking weird thing to happen, especially like with, well, I don't know how it's going in Chicago and all those places, but yeah, that's what's happening, right? The purge, as they want to call it. But you guys are young enough, especially this young generation. This is to you, right? Don't be surprised if people pull up and say, okay, doesn't matter if you're part of the fucking crew. You gotta come and you gotta go fight fucking halfway across the world. What? I don't speak fucking Latvian. Don't matter, nigga. You gotta get out there. We hear you guys are good. What you gonna do when they come for you? That's all I'm saying. That's all I'm saying. I'm just making some observations because yeah, I haven't been. I'll post when I can, but like I say, you gotta have discernment, you know. And if you can, exile, like it says in the Bible, right? Do something. Right? I hear Africa's the spot to be. You might, I mean, it's all timing. But in my previous post, you will see if you take a look at the date. It's not a question of, well, they're gonna. I mean, think about it. Once again, if you pull out in the sky, you're in a plane. Can you like really 30,000 in the sky and more, and you see some fucking like fast jets is one thing, yes, but you see that shit, and a fucking mushroom just before you land in the air, like, that's got to be quite a scene. And once again, these devils, they like to do shit, in their sleep, right? They plan in secret and all of that. It's all that. And they probably dream this shit up, but they even know that to make that happen, it's going to take a lot. So whether now they have the technology to block the sun or maybe pull off a UFO fucking thing, right? And make you believe like you could see it with your eyes, right? Like a fucking AI or something. Well, have discernment. That's all I would say. Like I say, I ain't seen enough. If I saw a UFO, I'd be the first one to say, listen, you don't want to fucking be here. We got a fucking war going on with this, that. They don't like black people. I assume you're probably part of the melanated world because you were able to get through the Van Allen belt without melting your craft, whatever technology, and bones. And God made you in a very, as they say, woven, very intricate way. I would say that. I'd say, God, right? God made you, I'm sure because he would have been here since yesterday or maybe right now. Rest in peace to George Carlin. Yes, I have a little cynicism there. But I wanted to throw out this episode. Yeah, because folks, I know, I follow you. Yes, big out love to Sloan Bella. I love Sloan Bella. Is awesome, I mean, I therapeutic. And I wish her the best out there. And be careful because when I came out in the city out here, I mean, this is Toronto, Canada, right? I was listening to a lot of, what it is her readings. And yeah, very cool, very cool. But it's always nice to know a Gen X who got the stuff going on. And once again, IUIC, I always follow. Sikaris are cool too. But once again, have discernment. Even with some of the Israelites, have discernment. We have it here in Toronto also. And it's like, I'd like to check it out. And hopefully that invitation will be there. But once again, it's still new. But Bishop Nathaniel and Deacon Asaph and of course their crew. I call them the merry band of men, right? Like Robin Hood and his crew, the merry band, the merry men, but merry Israelite men. Yes, with the bomb and all. So I've been following them, and yeah, there's a lot of other good sites like, of course, Dr. Campbell, who's been bringing out the truth. But there's a lot of other media out there, and yeah, check me out on Getter. So in the meantime, just before we wrap this up, thank you for tuning in to the day. Hey, just kick back and see. It's only not even March. You get it? And wasn't fucking very long, even though it's gonna be like done in a minute. That's what I'm saying. Take it easy. So let's go back to learning and see if we get something from this, especially all you OG gangsters that have been fucking, what, second, third generation. Shame on you. Bringing our even though, like, we know, I mean, I know it's happening because I am seeing a lot of young brothers out there, right? It's resonating. Some brothers like, hey, they're like, yo, Esau's going to do it, and they're just like talking, and it's like, and it don't mean hate. It just means that, and even then, you're gonna see folks like some of my good friends, they're coming from all kinds of countries. Like I said, I grew up and the thing about Gen X is we could have grown up with friends whose parents were Nazis, right? And they were feeling bad. They brought their Nazi ass here to Canada, worked in some engineering. And you know what? They growing up, they'd be like, "Hey, we're sorry about that, Schwarzer. Yeah, it was crazy. We didn't know, you know." And then I met some of my friends who, Esau, right? And that whole tribe of Edom, they'd say, "Yo, you guys have been dissed and you've been ripped off by my people," and they're woke on that. So yeah, and then of course when you talk about the military once again, right? There's gonna have to be definitely even some type of reconstruction because it's the military that obviously the complex of it, the industrialized complex, which goes back to Truman and they were warning us. They're like, man, we got some, and you have that other weirdo fucking Oppenheimer, and now I'm like Baghdadita, I am death. Like what the fuck? And he had tears in his eyes. Like, where is he now? I wonder. Really. Like I'm sure he just didn't evaporate and probably, I don't know. I'm just throwing it out there. Right? Because they always come back thinking when they do their ritual, whatever it be, because it all boils down to the magic they do and the anti-god of everything, right? The antithesis of uh, living in the flesh and manipulating all psychosenses by any type of alternate means only. That's what do you call it? Is it what do you call it? CERN. Maybe they got something going on, but they're only fucking with molecules, right? Molecules, and if a spirit can go through molecules, they're trying that. But I have a strong feeling that shit don't work. And it's just a bunch of loony fucking people out there who are really, they believe their shit, just like we have a generation that believes in, like what was magic kids. I don't even, even, and another thing, even when you take a break from watching all the heavy shit, and this is how I did start off this post, about having discernment, and to a point when you have, like, once again, the 2/3 of the population, at this early time, even though the time has been fragmented, right? It hasn't been that long ago when you think 2 or 3 years, but it was a long time ago because we didn't do much in those times. So that's enough time for people who know how to design. You see a lot of those rich people, they live like they're not, like Kissinger's still around, right? What is he, 300 now? Right? They ain't going anywhere. They keep their shit beaten on who and how by any means necessary in their own way, constructing and detailing the world, where it shall go next. But we shall overcome. I'm hopeful. For these things are for a time, right? A time for this, a time, you know the drill. Just keep it in mind that this too shall pass. God spare a life. So let's hear what this brother was saying. This is the date.
Had to sign for me to go in. So 41 and a half years later, here I sit.
Now a lieutenant general, Dimitri Henry joined the Marines in 1981.
Did you experience anything that felt like discrimination as you were coming up through the enlisted ranks?
I would call it points where individuals would show their disdain for someone who looked like me.
So how did they express their disdain?
The typical name calling.
The N-word?
Yes.
How did you react?
I chose not to react. If you're going to allow someone else to control your emotions, then you've already lost.
While Henry was still a sergeant,
Colin, welcome, sir.
Colin Powell became the first black chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff. During the first Gulf War against Iraq, Powell showed the nation a black general in charge.
Our strategy to go after this army is very, very simple. First, we're going to cut it off, and then we're going to kill it.
But Dimitri Henry says he still feels judged by the color of his skin.
It helps me to focus more because I understand what is being thought about me and what people may decide to do just based solely on what I look like.
That sounds like a I'll show them attitude.
Unfortunately, I think that's exactly what it is. It's a survival type of tool.
Henry survived to become the director of intelligence for the chairman of the Joint Chiefs, another first for black Americans in uniform.
That happened on the backs and shoulders of others that have gone before, and it just builds and builds and builds.
Mr. Secretary. Good morning, David.
The most obvious result of the forces Harry Truman set in motion 75 years ago is Lloyd Austin, the first African-American defense secretary.
Would you?
So there we go. First African American defense secretary. Shout out. However, have discernment, right? And someone told me a joke the other day. They said, remember back in the timeline when you look at Hollywood and all that, right? So you had Rosemary's Baby, right? And then Rosemary's Baby, this is like what, 68, becomes The Omen. And The Omen, if most of you know the horror film, right, where the kid is like the devil's kid, right, Damien, right? There's Omen 1, then there's Omen 2, he's like a teenager. 3, he becomes the president, right? You with me here? And of course, here we are today. And of course, hey, even a few of the leaders, if you follow the timeline and the age, or maybe, whenever they were cooking up these ideas in the wood, in the wood hood, those folks, of course, would say, you know what? Henry Kissinger wanted to be a spy. Let's do a movie for him, and he's a spy. But we write it. They do that shit. So hey, but of course, I'm sure your president is way older than the characters, but the timeline does follow because by the time the Omen becomes Damien becomes the president, he's already like near his 40s in part 3, and we're led to understand that it's in the future. I'm just throwing it out there, but I digress. All right. So here we have, of course, an establishment that's run by the leader, who's probably run under another leader, not necessarily voted by us, but even in some such an event is voted in as a leader by, what do they call it? And is it what's the term? Electorate college or electorate college, and thus that person brings in his people, his secretary. So this gentleman here, honorable, I gather, as much as the history. I like the late Collins. I would wonder, you never hear much about the action they might have seen, as much like being on the ground, and you never really hear about it. But yeah, I just don't. So this is where the world stands now. And the only thought I had, and once again, fair use, just some criticism, just a critique here. If anything was to go messed up, if we're gonna have a nuclear shit go down, right? Who do you think they're gonna blame? The black guy, bro, 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 bro. You can just see. I can just see that happening. I can say, yo, they're going to drown. It's because of him, because he owned on the way. Because he, I don't know. Once again, I'm just throwing that out there. He's running the shit. He's down there, and once again, we don't even. I don't know. Does he like this other brilliant soldier said? Right? They were calling him nigger. Hey, look at him with disdain. But hey, bro, don't probably care. Maybe you don't have that empathy. Maybe you come in here and say, "Look, I just want my money." But that's food for thought. Once again, this is the date. Thank you for tuning in. Let's check a look what the Honorable Secretary of Defense has to say.
Good morning, David.
The most obvious result of the forces Harry Truman set in motion 75 years ago is Lloyd Austin, the first African-American defense secretary.
Would you be in this job without that order?
Probably not. Probably not.
In the 2 years he's been in the job, Austin has more than doubled the number of black 3- and 4-star generals and admirals, from 10 to 22.
That's a dramatic change.
Mm-hmm.
Did you select these generals because they were the best person for the job? Or did you select them because they are African American?
We selected them because they're the best people for the job.
It's been 75 years since Truman issued his executive order.
Is there equal treatment and opportunity in the Army?
One more take, because this is important. We've seen the folks that are now employed, and Isn't it interesting that what's happening now in the world, uh, from what I'm seeing, a lot of these folks have some type of say, but not enough say against maybe even to cure the injustices that still happen in this world, not just the inner cities, right? But in the world as one, least regarding places and countries, continents that probably could align, but not. Like, for example, a lot of these folks probably would not be for a united Africa. A lot of these folks might not be for the Israelites when shit has to hit the fan, as they are prophesizing that when it comes to time, when they want to get rid of them or the cause or try to attempt before the great coming, it's going to happen with folks like this who look like this anyway, because that's who's literally, according to what we see here and here, is has the world in its hands. These folks have the world in its hands per se, right? I don't know the positions. They probably, not high level, but maybe I don't know. Maybe there's have to be another investigation into that or a blog into that. But when you think of it, whether it be 5 cops on one or 20 generals or whatnot, right? We're still in the same. Almost makes you question, will it get better for the people as a whole, meaning the world? Just because we have a lot of folks of color, in this case, black guys, when there's a lot of black guys, I'm sure, who could do just as good and maybe are not selected as, like, how can I say? And this is not giving a shout out to any gangs, but because we know at least their beast is run by the beast. So the beast could be also part of this, right? It's just food for thought. I'm just throwing it out there because this is the time we live in. And so once again, when we think about that brother who went out to Ukraine to fight on behalf of pastor, went out to fight, and we haven't heard anything from him. And now you have these folks here who are probably backing everything that's going on right now with the wars that are happening and everything else that Esau is telling them it's got to be so, or else at the end of the day, Esau could say, you're not going to make any decision that will affect the outcomes of your people, particularly.
From 10 to 22.
That's a dramatic change. Did you select these generals because they were the best person for the job? Or did you select them because they are African American?
We selected them because they're the best people for the job.
It's been 75 years since Truman issued his executive order.
Is there equal treatment and opportunity in the armed forces?
If you ever stop striving to achieve that goal of equal opportunity and equal treatment, I think then you'll begin to slide backwards.
So there you go. That's my personal review as to, at least in this edition of the date, as to the high probability of what to expect. Right? Is this bro going to be responsible for? Because you could see the pattern, right? He's going there. He's on the behalf, and he's the guy. He's the Secretary of Defense, right? And at the end of the day, is he considered American enough to benefit for all of this, right? Apart from the fact that he's probably making it, there's so much that's baffling, right? In the sense that we think we've come such a long way, and in fact, we really haven't, right? And this is such an interesting time. If you're young, you can make that difference. You can do something better than nothing, but it feels a lot like we're powerless and we can't do anything, only relying on the power of some people to do something. People who can't do anything even for themselves, right? So it's very, and once again, This is all a period of time. We could look back at this guy maybe. God spare life, you make it to 2030 and you say, hey, if he's still in the house or not, right? We know he's got a key to what the destiny of this world is, or what's to come. And I get a strong feeling if it had to get to that, once again, even before it hits the old guy, right? It definitely is they're gonna have a reason to say, blame it on the black guy, right? Because he's like the OG right there. But bless his heart and good luck. This is the date. And once again, this is just a little something to look at. Don't forget pop by here on Getter because I find it to be one of the better Getter sites where you can get your news, man. We've got some great followers. Thanks again. I'm way up there. I'd rather have you, like I said, once you get at least 3 good followers, whatever it be, you're okay. You don't need to have billions of people in this convoluted world or very self-absorbed world of what we call pride. Yeah, because pride is ego, right? So this self-absorbed pride of, hey, we don't need God. We need to have followers, and we need to have so we can be influencers. It's just another word, I guess, for priests, pastors, ministers, right? Influencers. So yeah, definitely pop by. And some other quick stories actually while I'm here. Oh yes, the Director of Business Development Operations and Finance, the Black Teacher Project. So there is sort of an application for this job, right? Something to look at. The Director of Business Development Operations and Finance with the Black Teacher Project, BTP, is an opportunity for a leader who is passionate about the development and thriving of Black teachers and unapologetic about centering Black liberation. So it's new. It's something to check out, but they got some type of a budget. Let me see. And you can actually take a look here. It's part of the National Equity Project. So something to take a look. Have discernment. Once again, as long as you could include the bros, it helps, right? Not just to see one bro and the token bro, because this is what it's all about, right? It's about taking back at least that night. They always say take back the night. How about taking back the black man's night, right? So yeah, you can take a look at the position. In this role, you'll be responsible for developing and leading the multi-year strategic planning process for BTP that identifies the program and impact goals, learning questions, and resource and infrastructure needs. Now, this, of course, is in the United States. But definitely, if you're out in the States, there is something. Yes, Oakland, California, United States, and this is the application here. And you can import your resume. If we had this in Canada, no, but right now they don't really care about us right now. Not right now. There's not all lost hope, but not right now. So this looks like a good film, right? Cocaine Beer, right? Okay, that's going on. And yes, get ready. You're probably going to have another vaccine coming up. Approval for RSV vaccine, which is basically kind of like the cold, but not the cold, right? RSV. They mention, let's see here, because what is RSV? Respiratory syncytial virus is a common respiratory virus that can cause mild cold-like symptoms. The recovery time is typically a week or two, and most infants will get it before the age of 2, as per the CDC. But certain children are more likely to develop severe symptoms. In typically healthy adults, for example, RSV might look like a nasty cold. But for premature infants and older adults, it can be a serious threat, right? So there's more to read. Of course, obviously with weakened systems, but I am no doctor, so definitely read as to what is being said here, right? It can be what they're saying. What we're reading here also is that it can become a much more serious infections. Right? Symptoms of RSV can include wheezing, difficulty breathing, decreased or no appetite, decreased fluid intake, sneezing and coughing, running nose, and fever. according to the CDC. And it can cause bronchitis, pneumonia, and require oxygen and intubation. So, as I'm reading it, it seems like a very nasty cold. And once again, and when it comes to that stuff, as we know now, well, at least when it comes to C19, it seems to be tethering away, further away, and maybe at some point it'll be cut off from the the genes of folks that makes folks not feel well, right? But hey, if you got to get it, get it. That's all I can say. Haitian groups ask Canada to condemn racism in Dominican Republic deportations. So that's happening. I'm not going to read all through it, But a group in Haiti that supports people sent home from the neighboring Dominican Republic is calling on Canada to raise the alarm about accusations of inhumane and racist treatment of those fleeing. Yeah, well, what else is new? And you know what? Once again, you have to have discernment, and you got to know your history of what the Clintons did way back when I was a young adult, calling us the super predator, as you see in this post, right? Because it's that deep. So, once again, thank you for tuning in, and we'll be right back.